is definitely a snack size portion. It's mostly a sit and get, because I'm going to go and demonstrate what I've done and how to do it from scratch. And then also I'm going to try to answer some of your questions and try to answer the essential questions that are tied to this. So we won't be in too much of a rush, and we'll get done in about 25 minutes here. And I just want to give another minute as people are coming in through Hopin and joining. The first link I'm going to share in the chat here is for the presentation itself, the slide deck. And I have a number of other links I'm going to share. Some of them are linked directly through this slide deck on one of the slides for all the templates that I'm going to share with you. But I'll make sure I share them all in the chat too, so they get added to all of the archive for watching these later. The first place we're going to go together will be in about 10 minutes, and it will be that link to the digital brochure that we made for this summit. And I'm going to go in and kind of edit mode in the back end and show you how I did it, talk a little bit about it, and then start one from scratch. Hello, Amber. So I'm going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Joel LaBelle, he, him pronouns, and I'm a professional learning coach in educational technology at Capital Region ESD 113. I'm welcome all of you who are joining across the state of Washington and maybe beyond in across our region. I'm presenting today from the occupied territories of Squaxin, Nisqually, and Chehalis tribal nations in what is now called Olympia, Washington. Let's start off with reviewing our summit goal, or our session goals for today. So I hope that I can help you learn how to use some digital tools to create your own interactive slide decks. And I want to give you some access to some templates. So basically some make a copy links from resource guides and interactive notebooks that I've already created. So you can make a copy for yourself and then start messing with it all you want. And the last thing is to walk away with some new ideas. Maybe from me, I'm going to throw out some ideas of how you could use these clickable interactive brochures, but you might also get some of them in the chat while other people throw out some ideas of things they've done or some things they might want to do. And I'm mostly here to try to organize some of these resources and give a quick demonstration and summary. It's not going to be super comprehensive, but I did notice that if you look up and you Google this stuff online, or you try to find YouTube videos to explain how to edit slide themes, there's a few things that are sort of out of date. A few language things in Google have changed on Google Slides. And in some ways, it's not as easy just to search and find a 5-minute video. So that in some sense, today's presentation in this session is going to be just that. So we're going to explain what a digital brochure is in the first place, show you some examples. I'm going to explain how I made it, how to make your own, and try to answer these essential questions. And I will budget at least about 5 minutes at the end for for me to give some time to address any questions that have been thrown in the chat along the way. Okay, essential questions. So the thing about this summit is when we were in the early planning stages of it, we decided we wanted there to be really solid takeaways to the sessions. We didn't want too many big abstract discussions and people walking away thinking that they just had mental stimulation. We wanted the presenters to answer something directly. And so I'm going to introduce these questions built around these certain strands. And then at the end of this presentation, I'm going to try to answer these a little bit. So the first question is, under the digital tools strand, how can we purposefully and effectively integrate digital tools to impact learning and practice? And in instructional practices, the essential question was, what actions can we embed in our practice to support our students, communities, and each other in order to disrupt and then dismantle inequitable practices and systems so that all students achieve to high levels? So at this point, let's see, we're 5 minutes in. Let me check my timing here. I think that's roughly what I'm going for. I want to show some examples of what I've done in the past. And so you'll see it already built. And then I want to show some steps of how to do it yourself. And I also want to show some examples of it embedded already into a Canvas page so that you can see and kind of vision what it would look like to maybe use one of these within your LMS. So maybe you're using Google Classroom or Canvas or Seesaw, and you can use the embed feature to put slide decks from Google Slides and usually from PowerPoint as well. You can share it right in there and embed it directly into the LMS. So first, it does work in Google Slides and PowerPoint. I'm way more adept with the Google Slides version of playing around with slide themes, but PowerPoint has all of the same type of capabilities from what I can tell. It publishes to the web in a slightly different way, but it seems like you should be able to embed it in Canvas pages too. Let's start with looking at the interactive brochure from this summit that some of you might have already been clicking on to get a summary of the day or find some of the contests. And we'll look what it looks like on the back end. So when you're in edit mode on a Google Slides presentation, you have your slides on the side here. And the important thing to mention about how I built these is that you can't click anything. Even though I'm in edit mode, I can't click and move anything around on here because it's kind of stuck. It's behind. It's in a layer. And that layer is called a theme. Google Slides used to call these master slides, and in an effort to have more or less exclusive language, I guess, or more inclusive language, they're trying to get away from the master connotation, and they're just calling it slide themes now. So when you're on a Google Slides slide deck and you go up to the top where it says slide, now at the bottom and there's this little updated thing, and it hasn't gone away. It's even though it's been updated for a couple months. Try to draw your attention that this has changed. This used to say master slides or slide masters, and now it just says edit theme. And when you go into edit theme, it opens up this new layer here. So you have your slides still, but these are layouts. So you can see that for the digital brochure, what I did is I made a layout for the cover on day 1 that had a video here. And I made another layout on day 2. And that allowed me, if I was in my slide deck and adding a new slide, for day 4, I'll come down here and add this style. Another advantage of this is that the user can't move anything around. Once this is in present mode, and only when it's in present mode, you'll be able to click around all these links. So you'll see right now I can't click here. And if I go into present mode, now I can start clicking through the links. And all these links are just links to slides in the same Google Slides deck. So it's just referring back to slide 4 or slide 5 and skipping around. I'm going to go back into the edit mode. I'm going to show you how to do this from the start, but one important thing you do is you create a kind of overall major theme, and that's where I tend to put my tabs so that they automatically get added to every layout below. So if I was going to add a new layout in here, which I would do by going here, that new layout is going to have everything I put on that first slide. If it had links, if it had this notebook design that I built, it's going to have everything already laid out for you there. And then you'll add things like new buttons or new titles. Oops. So let me just check my notes to see where my next thought was. Okay, so some important things to remember about this are that when you share this link with your participants, with your students, you don't want to share it in edit mode. When you share something in edit mode, people can write on it. And if you're planning on having people fill it out or make a copy for themselves to fill it out or save or move things around on a shared slide deck, then you'll want to treat it that way, and you'll want to give everyone instruction on how to play around with slide decks collectively, how to undo, for example. But if you're just trying to make a click-through, if you're just trying to make an interactive brochure, you're maybe giving a choice menu, you want to make a kind of library of sorts for your students to choose over the summer for summer readings, and it's all just clickable links, then you want to send this to folks in present mode, or you want to publish it to the web and share that link. The way that you publish to the web, in a Google Slides template is to go to File, Publish to Web. You can find a link if you're just trying to share a link, or you can go to the embed, choose to embed it. Always make sure that your ESD or building or district isn't automatically restricting you, and try to open it up so that folks will be able to access it. And when you have this, you can go into Canvas and embed it right on a page, and it will click through and work within the page. So these have been really useful to just gather links for people. I'll show you some of the other examples here that I have. Oops, give me just a second to stop the screen share and open up a link. And it's time to start sharing some links with you all. So this is a link of the digital brochure in portrait layout. That's how we laid it out for the summit. So if you want to make a copy of that and play around with making something in that portrait layout. I also started early on in our stages planning a landscape layout. So I made a version of that for you to copy as well, in case that's better suited for whatever design you're doing, or the way that you're laying out your text, or the way that your students are engaging with it on a screen. You know, if they're holding an iPad or something and they're always turning it, then maybe it doesn't matter so much. If they're using a tiny screen on a Chromebook and it's going to always be in landscape, then maybe you want to help maximize that. I have some other templates here that I'm going to share in the chat that I just sort of named template 1 and template 2. Don't worry too much about what the purposes of these were originally. It's more about just giving you more options with more colors and more ideas about what you might want to do. So we're going to open one of these for you to see. Back to screen share. Yes, share that, please. Okay, so this is one I made for another presentation and something that I'm presenting at this summit about how to go through the Apple Teacher Certification process and their Learning to Code curriculum. And the point of this was to provide a space with like all of the starting points that someone might need, the main website and the basics, and then get all the way into the nitty-gritty, maybe by including teacher guides and ebooks. And this wasn't easy to find by just Googling it or going on the Apple Teacher website. So I created this resource guide for participants to just have an easy way to kind of go back and find those links again. We all know, like, oh, I have the link to that thing. And our students know that too. They know they've been sent something, but they can't always just immediately recall the entire structure of how it was delivered to them. And sometimes these easy reference guides work really well. I mean, we have an interactive participant experience website built, and we built this not because we're trying to have, you know, competing options, just because more and more ways to engage helps people have different choice, and there's more variability. Okay, and we are going to start completely from scratch here. So I'm going to send you a make a copy of the sandbox. There's not much going on in here yet, but if you wait until the end of this presentation, you can copy it and start with a more basic version than some of the ones that I've already built up with a bunch of detail. So when you go into your slide deck and you want to create a digital guide, and I'm going to try to do this in about 8 minutes. We'll see how it goes. You go into the slide, edit theme. I created a shape here. And I'm on my main theme here. You know, the main theme is the whole thing. Every slide is going to have anything you put here. If you put a little piece of text on there, there's going to be there on every one. If you put a fillable text box on there, it's going to be there for every one. So I'm going to go into the theme. I'm going to grab this shape, and I'm going to make a bunch of them. And we'll call that good. Quickly go in and get some color in there. And I'm doing this kind of haphazardly, but I'm showing you that, you know, you can definitely sit here and tinker for a long time. That's what I've done with the ones that you've seen. but this isn't something that necessarily needs to even take you all day, right? You can write in here, math, stuff like that. And then you eventually will be able to to link each of these tabs across the top to different slides. But first, you need to create different layouts. So first, we have our first layout here. And we're going to say that this is the math tab on here. And so what I do is I end up covering this math tab with another similar shape. A little longer. And that makes it look like it's pulled down. I put math on top of there still, and match the color. And then when you go through and click through the guide, this is going to look like it shoots down. So you saw that in hours, where the end of day reflection is sticking out because that's the tab that it's on. And if you go through the slide deck, it kind of moves through. That just helps the user see where they are. So then if you want to create another layout, you could duplicate this a couple different times. You would right click and go to duplicate, duplicate. We'll just make, how many do we have? We have 4 named ones here. And you can name these. It's going to name it kind of wild numbered file names here, but I go through and name them something really useful. So eventually when I come into my slide deck to add it, I can add it in. Now, you could add multiple versions. So one of these could be notes. And maybe what you're going to do is just create a text box placeholder. Now, it looks kind of funny because it puts this on here, but this isn't going to show up on the slide. It's not going to say first level, second level on the actual slide when you add it in. What it's going to do is it's going to give an empty text box for your user to be able to type into. Now, the slightly annoying thing is that if they're going to be typing into it, they can't be in present mode because, right, they got to be in edit mode so that they can type directly into it. But they need to be in present mode for these links to work. So for example, if you want to create something like an interactive notebook, then you want to design it where you've built the links not back here in the slide themes, but you've built the links actually on top on the slide itself. So right now I can't move any of these things because they're stuck here. But if you had then created the shape and linked it right here on the slide, yes, your users could move stuff around, which you'd have to instruct them not to do, but then they would still be able to work the links and type. If I was to add a new layout, I'm going to go add that layout that had that text box here. And it adds this right into the slide. So we're going to say this is your fun weekend. And we're going to call that in the fun and games. When we go back into slides, edit theme, I can go up to this top theme and find here, and I like the Control K function, my favorite function shortcut on a computer. Control K brings up the hyperlink menu. So you don't even have to right click and say insert link or find out where the silly little link button is up here. You can just press Control K and it'll bring this up. And I want this to go to a slide in this presentation, slide 2. That's the one we just created there by adding it not just within the design, but actually adding it to the slide deck. Now it has a link to it. And if we go into present mode and we click on the fun and games, it's going to bring us where we wanted it to. As you see, I can't type here because I'm in present mode. I'd have to come out of it and come into edit mode. So moving pretty quick, I'm just going to check my timing and make sure that there's some key things that I didn't forget for you all. Let's see here. We kind of created a basic guide in a few minutes. The thing that I like to do on that guide, if you need to, is you can design these however you want. You can go in and change the backgrounds. I like to use Canva to go in and make nicer full-on backgrounds, like the title slide for the slide deck that I'm using today. And then come in here onto Google Slides, and maybe I made a button on Canva for like live yoga. So for example, I made this button here and these buttons on Canva, dragged them in, linked them to where they needed to go, and they sit right on the Keynote ready for users to click through and just go wherever you're trying to send them. I think we're at the stage where I want to offer that on this slide deck, the first link I shared, so if you scroll all the way to the top of the chat, I have those links I just shared in the chat all laid out nice and quick right here. So the 2 layouts for the digital brochure we used, and some of the older ones that I did, like the Apple Teacher one and a resource guide for students showing up as their full selves. So I also want to offer, before I try to answer any questions that are popping up in the chat, or try to troubleshoot, or maybe even just solicit some ideas that people have. Maybe you're just thinking, oh, I could use this for this or that, and we could start to brainstorm a little together. But first, I want to try to answer our essential question. So how can we effectively integrate digital tools? Well, you can use slide themes in either Google Slides or your slide creating software. I mean, Canva, PowerPoint, there's a lot of ways to create slides. If you are nervous about the design aspect and you want to start with a template, Slides Mania is an okay place to start for a template. However, I learned that really quickly I was customizing their stuff way further than they had. And in the end, it made sense for me to make it and copyright it through my ESD or through the LMS Solutions team, or something that made more sense of who was creating the work. You can use these to increase interactivity, to really create massive amounts of choice, right? This could be built, like I said, a summer reading library. Maybe it's coming up on Asian American Pacific Islander History Month or Heritage Month, and you've decided to, you want to give your students all these options they can engage with, videos from YouTube, things from Khan Academy, and you also want to put things in that drive them to your Google Classroom, let's say. You can build that all into a resource guide like this, and they know where to start every day. You could also embed that resource guide directly into the front page of your Canvas or your Google Classroom. I think you can also publish and embed these slides, like I said, into the LMS pages. And the cool thing about this is you can use the collaborative aspects of something like Google Slides or these web docs to bring even more collaboration. So there's one thing for you to say, hey, students, use this thing. There's another thing to say, hey, students, create this thing. And there's another step to technology integration where you're saying, all right, students, I want you to use the tool to create what you want or what you need even. So maybe they're creating their own resource guides for each other or their own study guides using the same format. And then in terms of the actions we can embed into our practice, I think we really need to implement as much student choice and voice as we can. And this is a great way to do it, using these resource guides and interactive notebooks. These are really good for informal formative assessments. I think some folks have some experience using Google Slides for that. And these resource guides can guide people along the way with links and resources and pictures or whatever. And then maybe you put one type of layout that's just the note-taking page. And the learner really gets used to, okay, at the end of each module or the end of clicking through a few options, I'm going to jot down some notes and then move on to the next one. And then these resource guides are great for socio-emotional learning, check-ins, daily journaling, things like that, where you either want the whole group to be joining in together, or you want to give people their own kind of private little notebook that you can share through the magic of computers, rather than trying to make them all physically.
Joe, there's some questions in the chat. How long did it take you to complete a one-day brochure for the summit?
How long did it take? To be honest, I was learning along the way. So in March, I learned about this idea. I created an Apple Teacher one, made it a little better the next time around. This was sort of the third major one. How long did it take me? I might have spent 20 hours on this, but I was being meticulous and changing things, and not all of the decisions were made yet. So I was throwing out templates, and then we were making decisions, and I was rearranging and trying out options. If you have the idea down, you know what you want to do, or you found a template that mostly guides what you want to do, you just need to add your own content. I think you could make a really high quality one in 2 or 3 hours if you have the content already organized. And Trin, I'll let you moderate the questions.
So the follow-up was 20 hours for each brochure.
Well, like, how do I say this? I did that for this summit, which was a huge thing that we were really trying to make like very clean and perfect. And it has a ton of information that was linking and waiting for links. So some of that was a creativity stage. That's what I'm trying to say. Probably about this summit brochure maybe took about it's hard to sell because I would open it up and start looking at it and just play with it and try something else new. So I did spend a significant time on that specific one. Let's say the other one I shared that was template number 2, that one probably only took me 2 hours. The one for, it says make a copy of template 2. So just to give some examples of different time lengths I've taken.
Great. Another question is, each student would need to have their own copy to edit, or otherwise would they have the ability to edit another student's response?
Yes, and that totally depends on the context of what you're trying to do with it. You're right. If you share one edit link with everybody, they can all edit the same slide deck. So everyone's going to be typing into the same thing. Maybe you want that. Maybe you want them typing into one big table and adding things across the table. But if you want people to have their own or to resubmit it back to you, then you'd want to share it as a make a copy link. And just while I have it here for folks that aren't super comfortable with how to do that, you'll go to the URL here, and instead of it saying edit, you'll change that to copy and send that to your learners. And as long as they have a Google Drive account, it'll open one up on their drive.
Great. That's it for questions right now in chat, Joel. Thank you so much. Joel's been amazing with our team on creating this digital brochure with our ideas moving and changing. And so for Alyssa, you were asking about 20 hours. It's probably because we were changing ideas as we went, and Joel just made it work. So Joel, thank you for this session. It was so informative, and we so appreciate the work that you've done for the summit.
Thank you. One last thing I will say is, if you Google it, if you're trying to find on YouTube other ideas of how to do this, it will be listed as like using master slides for your classroom or something. So don't be afraid to search that term, because you'll find the resources of people doing it. But because Google changed the name and the kind of way it looks, some of it's not as up to date. So if anyone needs any help with it specifically, I'd be really happy. Our LMS solutions team is here to help you folks. And if you want to kind of work one-on-one, send me an email. That's why I brought my email back up on the first slide. Awesome, Amber. Yeah, this, I think this sometimes just helps gather so much in one place. You can add your Bitmojis or your Memojis. You can really get creative with it. I saw Black History Month libraries. I saw things about student choice for how to choose their club for the year and things like that. So I really look forward to seeing new ideas come up about how to use this type of idea.